welcome on, bienvenue, welcome to the United Nations of Horror with your hosts Mark and Jason. Hi Jason.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. We've had a bit of a delay, but we did post, we kept everyone informed in the Facebook group since our last recording. Life, good news, good
Life.
things as well as bad, so, nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting. Some of it's weather-based, and interestingly, it's in England at the minute, it's snowing. And the snow all
Really?
around. Yes, in not the
Wow.
whole of England, but certainly in the parts I'm in the middle area, the Midlands.
Wow.
I always think that Americans must think when I say Midlands, it sounds like something out of Tolkien. I have to say, it's got that kind of vibe, has it? But yeah, it is
I think it
snowing
sounds
here,
cool.
which is kind of, and it is funny because now I've watched this franchise. Whenever I do anything outside or involving electricity or water, I start thinking this feels like Final Destination. I don't know.
Oh,
if
yeah.
this is a direction.
I mean, after you watch Final Destination, doing anything yard work or even boarding a flight. I was telling myself the other day when I was watching one of these, I think I'll never fly again.
Yes. Okay, I've only ever seen the first one. Before we covered all this, I'd only ever seen the first one. It was a fair while ago. Remember kind of liking it, but didn't remember much about it. How about you? Have you seen them before? Have you seen much of it before?
So, like you, I had seen the first one before when it came out initially. I think I saw it on video cassette, probably. I'm dating myself, VHS back in the day. And then the others, I had kind of seen some of them on television, and of course they were cut. So I would see some here and there, but I've always really liked the Final Destination movies. In fact, shout out to my buddy Rob. He couldn't make it today on the show. We were actually going to try to get him for this, but again, life. But he's a big Final Destination fan, and he had told me, gosh, I think probably 2 years ago, you guys need to cover Final Destination. And I said, yeah, we do.
And Rob was absolutely right.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have to say, I found this a tremendously fun franchise. How about yourself?
Oh, I did too. And we'll go through all these films and talk about them, but I think they all have something to offer,
Yeah.
And I think, if you're a horror fan, you're going to enjoy it.
And it says here, apparently, apart from the 5 films we're going to watch, there's one about to come out with Tony Todd. It might be Tony Todd's last film, obviously, as he passed.
Yeah.
And I am also glad we just happen to be covering a franchise that contains such a genre legend as Tony Todd, right?
Yeah, we were talking when he first passed, and I think it kind of caught us both off guard,
Yeah.
because I think we had both just watched the first one already, and I was like, man, that just seems unreal. When it's almost like spooky when you watch something with someone like Tony Todd, and then a day or two later you hear they passed away. I was just like, wow, it's I feel bad for his family, of course, and may he rest in peace. But he is a genre legend, as you say, Mark. So I think
never had a bad
timely
performance in anything ever.
No, he was actually he voiced Venom in the new Spider-Man 2 game, and he did such a good job in that. And then, as you say, we probably have one more Final Destination film. So
we love him in sort of. It's not just TV movies. He does TV. He's significant in Star Trek, for example. That voice, man, that voice is terrific.
No one better.
Yeah, there's actually an audio version of Dracula done by Anthony Mann, who used to do or still does the Horror Etc. podcast, but he's also sort of produces audio plays.
Yes.
He did a version with Dracula with Tony Todd as Dracula. Amazing. Amazing.
Oh yeah, I have that one, and it
Yeah,
is amazing.
yeah.
Bleak December, I believe, is his
Bleak December,
label
yes.
for anyone who wants to check it
Yeah,
out, and
he
I
does some
highly
great
recommend
stuff.
it.
Yeah, yeah, he does some great stuff.
Yeah.
And apparently, there's apart from the movies, there's 9 novels and 2 comic books for Final Destination.
Yeah, I'd love to check all that out at some point.
Yeah, the origins of this are weird because it was originally an X-Files script. An X-Files script, which is kind of amazing. Um, uh,
Yeah,
so, um, so
and I never knew that honestly until I started looking stuff up for this podcast, obviously, and I thought, man, this ties in perfect with all the stuff you love, Mark, because we often go back to X Files on this show,
yeah, yeah,
just talking about the cultural impact it's had, throughout the world and throughout horror in particular,
yeah,
as a
yeah,
genre.
yeah. And it's kind of interesting. For some reason, I thought James Wong and Glenn Morgan came up with the original because they were writers on the X-Files. But no, it was written. The original script was written by a guy called Jeff Reddick, who actually brought James Wong and Glenn Morgan on when he was developing it as a film to sort of clean it up, and they're great writers. So good idea. But it was It has got connections to the X-Files, and I can see it. I can totally see why
Oh yeah.
it would be an X-Files kind of thing. Interestingly, the original script, there were older characters, but they kind of the studio wanted it to swerve into younger characters because of the success of Scream. And bearing in that audience. And I'll tell you what, great decision. This really works well for younger characters. This first movie, or in fact, most of the movies are
Yeah.
young people, aren't they? So yeah, I got no fault with it. What the thing about this franchise is, it's kind of like a slasher series without the slasher, isn't it? It's
Exactly. There's no ghost face, there's no Michael Myers, but it literally is the uh I mean, it's like, you have tragic accidents every day. Someone slips on water, falls and dies, and some people say, that's like the Grim Reaper. And so
yeah,
essentially it's the Grim Reaper's the killer, and the fascinating thing is we never see the Grim Reaper physically do anything to anyone. It's literally death,
yeah.
death itself, which is haunting, because mortality is something that we are all going to face one day, and this film will certainly make you think about that.
Yeah, it's interesting that how this all. Apparently, it was inspired by a woman telling a story of someone. She was getting a flight out, and someone phoned her and said, "Don't take the flight. I have a bad feeling about it." And the plane crashed. She was due to get. But I have to say, I've also heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard when there's plane crashes, right? They always have an unusually high incidence of people just not turning up or cancelling. So they're often not full, which is interesting, right? So people have some sort of stress. I don't know if that's true or not. It's anecdotal.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
apparently it's based on a scientific study where they worked out that flights that have major accidents seem to have a higher percentage of people dropping out of the flight than is usual. So that's kind of weird, right?
just like a sixth sense, and
Yeah.
we all kind of have that, right? When you sort of feel something around you, like, man, something's not right, and
Yeah, yeah.
oftentimes there will be something off,
Yeah, I have to say,
spider sense, if you will.
yeah, I've been very the other day. I was washing my hands and I hadn't dried them completely, but I dried them mostly. And then I was doing something with the electrics, and then I realised what I was doing. It's like, well,
Oh,
man,
thank God.
you've watched Final Destination. You know what'll happen here. So one of the things I
Yeah.
like about this franchise is how they construct some of the deaths to show you the behaviours of people inadvertently creating the circumstances for or people around them circumstances for their own death, right? It's kind of fun.
Oh,
Anyway,
yes.
we wasn't going to spend too long on each film, but we kind of what we talk about is the set piece, the opening set piece, because they all have a very similar structure, don't they? They're different characters,
Yes.
but they all start with a major accident, which is always they have their cake and eat in these franchises. They show you a major accident where everyone dies, and then it turns out it's a premonition of one of the characters who warns others. So we do see them have the accident, but then we see them escape it. It's kind of a neat trick.
Yeah,
And often
I like it a lot.
they use that mechanism in other places, so you think someone's dying, but it's just another premonition kicking in later in the story. So it's kind of fun. So that's the kind of premise. Anyway, the first film, made in 2000, directed by James Wong, written was screened by James Wong, Glenn Morgan, and Jeffrey Reddick. Is like the first of the 5 that are currently out. There is a 6th one coming out, which obviously we haven't seen because it's not out. The main actors in this, the most recognisable for me was Tony Todd and Ali Larter. I know Ali Larter from other stuff. She's the blonde lady. But I didn't really recognise any of the others. This one is the one that sets up the plane crash. That is a plane crash, a major airplane disaster. Very well done, given it's 2000. So I liked some elements of it. And I mean, these films don't hold back on the gore either, do they?
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. I was instantly taken back because I was in high school when I saw this film, and I was like, man, that, it puts time in perspective.
Yeah.
But it's so unique because as these films go, you see sort of the changing of technology, like, oh, they're using cell phones here,
Yeah.
The cell phones look better here. I think in the first one, they still pretty much have landlines, right? So
yeah, well, cell phones were around in 2000, so but they were a bit bigger than usual. One thing I will say, there is, I mean, we've talked about how this is kind of a slasher. The other thing that this really reminds me of, this whole series, is the Omen movies. Where someone realises who Damien is, and then a whole chain of events happen that kills them by an accident, kills them. It was definitely much a nod to that, but they've really refined it in this. Another thing I will say about this series, in my opinion, is I've likened it to a slasher series. Most slasher series at some point fall off a bit, right? There's a bad one. I think all 5 of these are pretty decent, well-made films, personally.
Yeah.
Some are better than others.
Right. I didn't dislike any of them. I would totally agree with you.
Yeah. Now let's we'll quickly mention maybe not all, but some of the deaths. Maybe we will talk about one because they're all worth kind of talking about. And this is going to be spoiler filled.
We should go ahead and mention that.
So anyone is unaware of that. However, it's kind of fun to watch, even if you know what's coming, because the construction of the accidents is quite superb sometimes. They definitely use a lot of misdirection, don't they? They kind of try and suggest, something's going to happen here. I'll tell you what they love in these franchises: water and electricity.
Oh yeah, those
or
are
liquids
the two main killers.
Liquids and electricity, or there's kind of definitely almost every death seems to kind of involve them in some way. And if it isn't in the death, it's a misdirect that you think is going to be the death. All right, that's how it tends to be. The first death's kind of brutal, and it's like whoa. And I have to say, these movies are full of WTF moments all the way through.
Oh, big time. That's one reason I love them so much, because that impact is so huge when they do happen. Yeah. And also, as you say, Mark, the misdirection is really kind of genius, because you're just like, okay, they're about to die. Oh, nope. Like you'll see, some some water or something hit the floor, and you think, the water is going to get them, and it's not that. It's something else, and something else gets them.
And they definitely learned some camera tricks here to make liquids flow the way they want it to, so it looks like the liquids are sentient almost. They're moving in different specific directions, and also they withdraw after the death as well. So it's like, now the first one in the first film is a guy he's doing something in the bathroom, like brushing his teeth or something, right? And then we see liquid start to leak out or something and go towards him. And there's a loose fitting on the shower, and you think, is that going to swing around and hit him or anything like that? No, in the end, he accidentally slips on some slippery substance that's leaking across the floor, and somehow in the bath, I mean, he does hit, I think, a soap dispenser, and it goes in the bath. So he falls in the bath, but a cord wraps around his neck as he falls, and
Yeah.
the bath is so slippery he can't get any purchase, and he just hangs, right?
Yeah,
So that's
it's
first.
terrible because he's fighting so hard, but he really there's nothing he can do, no way he can contact anyone. And then I thought it was pretty brutal too because at the very end of it, the water sort of like just goes back under I think it's the toilet,
Yeah,
and so it looks like he's committed suicide
suicide.
when, yeah, when in
Yeah.
reality it's the Grim Reaper. That's what
Now,
what did him in.
yeah, in this first one, they aren't clued into the fact that if you avoid a major accident, you will eventually die unless there's certain rules around that. But
Right.
our hero, Alex and Claire's the Ali Larter character, want to go and look at the corpse, so they break into the sort of mortuary or the funeral place. Yeah, but the mortician's in, and this is Tony Todd.
Indeed. Yeah.
As Mr. Bloodworth. What a great name.
I love it,
Basically,
man.
being super sinister and sort of explaining you can't cheat death and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, he has
and,
so many great lines here.
yeah, and he's sort of saying, you'll be next. All this guy. What made me laugh the most is as they said, okay, we broke in. He goes, no harm, no foul, and he says, okay, we're leaving now. And he looks at Alex and he goes, see you soon.
So good, man.
And then they're
So
talking.
good.
Yeah, they end up talking about it on a outside cafe about, and one of their friends is like, "Yeah, this is all nonsense," and he's crossing around and goes, "Look, it's not going to get me." And as he says it, a bus just smashes over him. This is the other thing about the series. Sometimes the deaths are completely sudden and out of the blue, so you
Right.
never know when it's going to come. They
You
have it
never
both
know.
ways. They're either
Yeah.
setting up convoluted ones which turn out to be not what you think when it happens, or they just come out of the blue. So they're now putting together the fact that it's in a certain order. There's another lady who is in the kitchen. Basically, she's the kitchen kind of, I don't know, does it start? Fire is another big thing in these movies, right? But
With the teacher, yeah.
yeah, the teacher, she's freaking out. Kirsten Cloak, that is, who was in the Millennium series. Kristen Cloak, I should say. And she was in another series I quite like that I think James Wong and Morgan was involved with, called Space Above and Beyond. She's quite good.
Yeah.
And she's the
very good.
teacher that has kind of guilt because she was going to get back on the plane, but another teacher insisted she has to stay with the students and he'll go on. And, he blows up. And so she's kind of terrified, isn't she? Essentially, though, she's... the kitchen kind of wrecks her. Things are going wrong and stuff happens. And she's laying on the floor trying to reach up for something, and she accidentally pulls a knife rack over and embeds a massive kitchen knife in her chest.
Absolutely brutal. And of
Yeah.
course, Alex, he runs in trying to help her. And of course, we know the moment he touches the knife, he's totally screwed.
Yeah, don't do that.
Because it's going to look like he did it. And,
Yeah.
and he pulls the knife out too, which looks even worse.
Yeah,
So-
leave it be.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other survivors is Carter, who's kind of a wise ass who decides he believes them. He says now he doesn't want to die on those terms. He wants to die by killing himself, right? Starts driving his car wild and stops in front of an oncoming train. Drops his car on the tracks, but then changes his mind.
Yeah, this
But
scene is
then-
really well done.
Yeah, it's so good. It's really
It's
tense
intense.
and exciting.
Yeah.
But then he just changed his mind in the last last 10, 15 seconds. But his seatbelt gets stuck. But
Exactly.
he does get rescued. Alex does save him, but unfortunately, the flying shrapnel from the wreckage flies off and cuts off someone's head. Someone else's head. Another guy called Billy. Is it a guy? I can't remember now. So I'm reading.
Yeah, it's one of their other friends. I'm trying to think of his name.
Well, it says Billy
is it
here.
Carter?
Oh
okay,
no,
Billy.
it's Sean
Okay.
William Scott, isn't it? It's Sean William Scott in an early role. Stifler. It's him.
Okay.
I
See, I'm
forgot
getting
who-
the kids confused already.
The thing is, when you watch 5 in a row, you kind of Forget the fine detail, don't you?
Yeah, you do, and they start kind of running together almost. Like which film did this happen
Yeah.
in? But it's
One,
fun to marathon these like that.
actually, I should have mentioned there is a lot of nods to old horror legends names used here. For example, there's an FBI guy called Agent Shrek, Max Shrek.
Indeed, yeah.
The teacher, Kristen Cloak, we talked about, is called Valerie Luton, or Val Luton, right? The director,
Right.
Val Luton.
Which I thought was cool.
Billy, who I just mentioned, was Billy Hitchcock. There's a Cheney, there's a Wagner, which
really?
is Wagner's the guy that played the Golem, right? There's a Murnau. All named after
funny.
sort of directors or people connected with horror. There's a Browning, for example. Yeah.
You're right. There is a Browning. You know what? I didn't even make that connection the first watch.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I was just looking for the cast list and I remembered that thing. Yes. And essentially, they kind of realise if you actually manage to cheat death, escape, someone helps you, it steps over you and goes to the next person on the list. And it's all based on in the premonition. The first one to die in the premonition is the first one to die in this sort of set of circumstances. That's kind of how it works. Anyway, we'll not keep talking about these deaths. There's always a twist. There is a twist at the end.
Oh yes,
that's kind of. But we won't talk about that. But this one was fun. I like this one was a bit more of a one of the standout things that made differentiate this from the rest. And I'm not going to say it's better than the rest. It's just one of the different things. Is this took a lot longer to develop the mythos of fate is chasing us, something's chasing us. It took them a long time to get to that point. Realise that was happening. Whereas in the others, they kind of work it out fairly quickly, don't they?
They do. There's a lot to, I guess, sort of kind of educate the audience on in this film, which is why you kind of have that slow burn. But I think it's good and it works for this one. And then the others, they're like, okay, the audience already knows that. So
yeah, let's
get to it.
Yeah, let's kind of compare this to the other films. Personally, I think these films feel to me like there's two kind of levels, and they're quite close. I'm talking about, one level's a 7 out of 10 and one level's a 6 out of 10. It's kind of that, and I'll put this one on the higher level. How do you feel about it in terms of the rest?
No, I'm the same way, actually. I think the first one is definitely the best of all the 5 films, but,
yeah.
I don't want to say that the others are bad by any means. I just think this is the strongest, it's the most well put together film because it does contain all that lore, and it's it takes its time getting there as well. I think you also have more character development in this one compared to some of the others. I don't know that I just thought the characters were a lot stronger in this one. So yeah. I really love the first one, but I very much enjoy some of the other ones too.
Yeah, the characters were much better developed here. The lead, which was played by Devon Sawa and Ali Larter, were the two main leads. They were very good. They worked well in this, and that kind of helped too. But also the supporting cast was good. The realization of the airplane accident was cool as well. Really well done. So I kind of liked it. Which comes to the second film. Now, the set piece in this one is on a road. A major accident involving a haulage truck and logs coming loose, right?
Yeah, and this
might be the best
scene.
This might be the best set piece. I think they were all good set pieces, all of them. But this one, to me, felt, whoa!
Yeah, I feel the same way, Mark.
Yeah,
they really went obviously they really thought this through and just filmed it. They knew exactly what they were filming, and man, does it work! It is crazy.
Yeah, basically, we see the full accident and then realise it's a premonition, and she kind of holds back from going on the road, and she pulls over, and the state trooper says, what's wrong? He goes, there's going to be an accident with that truck, and he goes, hold on, ma'am, you need to calm down. Then the accident happens, right? And we take it from there. So various. This isn't just teenagers. This is a mixed bag. There's young. They're still fairly young, but there's like a mother and her son. There's a kind of a pregnant lady. There's the state trooper and a few other people who all avoid
Death.
this massive accident. Right?
Yeah.
They get questioned because it seems a bit sus, but, there's nothing there. But one of them, which is a lottery winner, a bloke who's famous for winning the lottery, and then he gets on the news because he's escaped this major accident, so he's the luckiest guy ever, which he's playing on to, right? He's in his apartment, and everything, almost comedy-like, starts going wrong. Like, he's got this special ring, and he drops it down the sink, and he puts it down the waste disposal, and you think, hold on, he's put his hand in a waste disposal. What could possibly go wrong there? But then it gets stuck, and then a fire starts, and then he's cooking sausages or something on the oven, and that starts. So basically, everything's on fire around him while his hand's stuck. So you're thinking, how's he going to go while this is all developing? And he basically takes his shirt off for some reason. I can't remember.
I wasn't sure why he did it. I was thinking, weird. Who cooks with their shirt off? And also the place is like a mess too. He's got like old food all around, and despite being a lottery winner, you'd think he could like hire someone to clean up, but no, he's kind of living the bachelor life, to say the least. And
he tries to get out the window, and the window seems to be jammed, and so he has trouble with that. So you think, is he going to just get decapitated by the wind? It's all that. He gets out, and he's trying to run down the chute and escape his burning apartment. The ladder gets stuck on the chute, so he has to kind of just shimmy down. He finally makes it. And at the bottom, something sticky, as usual, some sort of weird fluid makes him trip over, and he just falls on his back. But then he looks up at his burning apartment as he's on his back. He goes, "Luckiest man alive." And just as he says that, the ladder from the escape, the fire escape, comes loose, smashes down, goes straight through his head.
Yeah.
There's a lot of squashing in this, isn't there?
There is.
There's lots of squashing.
Man, just perfect timing though, like that. Like they couldn't get the timing any more brutal in this. It's so well done.
Yeah. So the lead in this play is called Kimberly. She, because of the nature of the premonition, and then someone's died, she Googles it and she finds stuff about the first film, the Flight 180, and she finds out there is still one survivor, Claire. Is still a survivor who has committed herself because she doesn't feel safe anywhere. So there is that. There's also one of the guys gets killed. The lead of the first film, we don't see his death, do we? We just hear he got killed by a brick, which is a bit odd.
We just kind of like read about it. I know. I think she mentions it too when they're like visiting her in the asylum, but yeah, essentially just like a brick, freak accident. So yeah, he doesn't get off, and somehow she's still left. So the sole survivor of the first one, basically.
Yeah,
maybe it was like a contract dispute or something, or they just couldn't get him to come back for whatever reason. Yeah, but I did find that interesting.
Yeah, it's good to see Ali Larter back, and she's older and she's kind of scared. There's quite an interesting little moment where Kimberly's going to see her and she has to take off all her rings and all this, that and the other, and she says, "Do I have to do this because she's dangerous?" And the nurse says, "No, because she thinks you might be dangerous to her." Which is kind of interesting. They go in and she sort of tells them what's happening, but Claire says, Kimberly says, "Yeah, in the premonition, I was the first one to go." And he goes, Hold on, you were the first one. Who was the last one?" It's like, "Evan." He goes, "But Evan died last. So, died last in the premonition, but died first. It must be doing it backwards or something." Anyway, whatever the rationale was. There's a really brutal moment where one of the people that survive is a 15-year-old lad and his mum. But he's off to the dentist. yeah, very, if you don't like The Dentist, this is not the film to watch. Because
Oh, it's not. It is
the
not.
dentist doing stuff, but then again we see liquid seeping, and we see the
Yep.
dentist's foot moving near the liquid, like, and he's using a drill, and you think something horrible's going to happen to the dentist, with the dentist. So there's a lot of tension around that scene, but they do it really well, right? It really made me laugh actually when it was. So
Oh yeah, some of the stuff that
it
you
was
just
so
kind of
fun.
laugh out of relief, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, they got past it, but then, I mean, eventually, like death is gonna get them. We just,
yeah,
as an audience, we're wondering when's it gonna happen? How's it gonna happen?
yeah. Kimberly's, I think, trying to rush there. Where anyway, Tim is with his mum, and he comes out of the dentist, and he's all perfectly. He's very happy, and he's just walking along, like really, bouncy, really happy. And suddenly, there's some weird accident out of nowhere. This is one of the sudden ones, where a window pane being attached to a big sucker thing actually just falls out the sky. Uh, in
Yeah.
effect, and just squashes him flat. I mean, literally flat.
Yep.
Amazing,
It's
amazing.
pretty great, and I mean, a lot of this stuff. I mean, you do see more and more CG as the films go, but a lot of this stuff is done pretty practically for the first
Yeah,
two films in particular, and it all looks good. Even I feel like even a lot of the CG stuff looks pretty good later on. I mean, some of
yeah.
it, as we'll talk about, is like 3D stuff, but that doesn't really matter. I don't think.
No, no.
It doesn't
There's a
interfere with the enjoyment.
slightly ropey CGI, but not with the
Yeah,
accidents. I'll mention
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
But the accidents look pretty damn good. I mean, some of it you can tell it's CGI blood, maybe, but
yeah, yeah.
the actual physical accidents look like they got weight and it's really happened and stuff like that. Given when this was made, and this one was made in 2003, right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's pretty good. Then Kimberly and one of the other guys is kind of running around trying to do stuff. But Claire turns up. She's checked herself out. She's decided she wants to help. And she takes them to see Bloodworth, who starts talking to them. And one of the things he said is, only new life can defeat death. Which makes them believe Isabella, who's having a baby, once the baby's born, that might stop the whole thing. Or stop it for some of them.
Right.
Um,
It would. Yeah, I mean, that's as far as assumptions go. I'd say, yeah, that's a pretty good assumption.
Yeah, I mean, the one, to be clear, one Kimberly's with is the state trooper, right? He's kind of becomes involved and he believes it. Um, there's a few other horrible deaths I just mentioned. There's one where a woman gets her head caught in an elevator door, but there's a creepy dude with her. Behind
Yeah,
her.
the
That was such a weird
creepy old
scene,
guy.
right? Nothing to
'Cause
do
we
with
think
it.
no, and we all think he's going to be the like person that gets her killed.
Yeah, because
Essentially,
one person sees like a weird shadow on the floor that looks like a man with hooks, but it's like
right?
I can't remember. Is it a little doll or figurine hanging on something? I can't remember.
I think it's
So
like a mannequin that's been dismantled. I
yeah,
think
so they're saying,
something like
"Oh,
that.
a man with hooks is going to get her." So they're kind of shouting this, and this bloke indeed has a weird bot. He's holding a box of like mannequins' arms and hooks. But
Yeah,
he's sniffing her hair in the lip. It's so weird. It's so weird.
it's very strange for sure.
Yeah, nothing to do with
Kind
anything.
of disturbing. But yeah, he
um,
really he doesn't have anything to do with the death. Ultimately, he's freaked out, of course, when she goes. Who wouldn't be after witnessing that? But yeah, they throw us off with that for sure.
yeah, then we get a really clever twist that we kind of start to realise that the deaths the people in the 180 flight who survived somehow stopped some of these people from dying in an early, by luck or accident, which is why the sequence isn't what it should be. It's kind of tied up to their deaths. It's a bit hard to explain. It's probably best if you just see the film, but just take my word for it.
Yeah,
there's a tie-up, right? Excuse me.
I know there was one point where I was like, I don't really necessarily care about the orders stuff. Like they do try to kind of make a big deal out of it, but
Yeah.
I never felt like it mattered that much. I mean, of course it matters to the characters, but as far as the audience goes, like I was just like, if they solve it or figure it out, that's good. But if not, they're gonna obviously keep dying off.
Yeah,
They just
but
don't know the order necessarily.
Basically it's quite a good setup. I might reveal one, I might not. I might leave that to the end. It's kind of fun to talk about, but maybe I won't. Basically, if any of these people that survive death rescue someone else, right, that someone else will die because they shouldn't have been rescued by that person, right?
Right.
That's what
Exactly.
they're setting up, right? And anyway, there's another thing where one of the girls who's kind of a real high maintenance kind of girl, she acts an accident where a car swerves and there's a set of PVC pipes that go into the back of her car. You think that's going to kill her, but in fact she avoids death and she's trapped in her car. So there's something across her. These pipes are across her legs, but there's also one sticking in the back of her headrest, where she's sitting, but she's kind of to one side, and it's jagged and pointy, right? And anyway, she's stuck in the car, but the fire service turn up and start cutting her out. They've got like those jaws of life things, they cut open cars with, and they're super noisy. Right. Meanwhile, she's on the phone. He goes, "Could you do that a bit more quietly?" She says to the fireman. He goes, "Oh, sure, lady. I'll put it on the quiet mode." He says, but as he tries to cut her out, it sets off her airbag, which immediately impales her head into the pipe.
It's brutal, man.
We also see the state trooper.
So good.
Yeah, there's all sorts of skidding cars at one point, and we also see the state trooper I mentioned rescue a young lad who's kind of trying to help out, but really, he's young, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he manages to grab this kid and pull him out of the way of a speeding car, so saves him, right?
Yeah, we get that speeding car element callback quite a few times. Going back to the bus in the first film. That's a really famous scene now. It kind of replayed again and again throughout a lot of horror films.
Yeah, indeed. And then also some gasoline gets set alight during all this mayhem, which causes... I think the girl who gets impaled drops a cigarette as she dies, which then lights this gasoline, which blows things up. And we see someone got chopped up with a barbed wire fence that gets thrown across, part of the explosion. Oh, man, that was brutal.
I don't know how I missed it. I was wondering, what caused the explosion. So I guess I didn't see the cigarette drop, or maybe
it was very, very quick. It was very quick.
Okay.
It was 5 seconds tops, right?
I had to have looked away a second, probably, glanced at my phone or something, because I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I couldn't figure out what caused the explosion. So I'm glad you saw that, Mark, because I missed it completely. But it's brutal. Yeah,
they're trying to develop the mythology partially successfully. There's one bit where Kimberly tries to kill herself, realising it's a way of avoiding death if she gets rescued, things like this. I won't go on about that too much because we're getting near the end of the film anyway, right at this point. But there's some twisty-turny logic about how to avoid death and how to cheat death and stuff like that. But there is quite a funny comeuppance right at the end. I mean, it shouldn't be funny, but it is. Where you realise someone who should have died has rescued someone else, and that someone else is in the frame. We'll leave that one.
Yeah, let's leave that one.
I have to say, I really...
Look out for it.
Yeah, this again is on the higher level for me, this film. I really liked it. It would just got on with the business a bit faster, which is kind of good. But, some of the strengths of the first one is it did take its time, and I quite appreciate that, So, yeah. It depends.
Yeah, me too.
Well, the next one...
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, the next one is, number 3. Come out in 2006. Again, we got Glenn Morgan and James Wan involved. They wrote the screenplay. James Wan directed this one, so he's back for, directed part 1, he's back for part 3. Part 3 was also done in 3D, and you can kind of see it in places. It's not overused, but it is there. You can kind of tell this is a 3D film, just watching it. When you're not watching a 3D film, there was one bit of hokey CGI. There was a CGI snake that came towards the screen.
That made me laugh.
That wasn't a good snake, but it was a fantasy sequence.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's
I
right.
don't feel it doesn't interfere. Like, it's kind of like a vision. The vision sequences pretty much will
Yeah,
often be kind of CG, but I don't know. Really didn't bother me. Now
it
I
didn't
was one
bother
of the
me at
people
all.
who,
Yeah, it didn't bother me at all.
yeah, it really. I think it's fine. The 3D fad was something that I kind of knew was gonna come and go pretty quickly. But it was a gimmick to get people in theaters, and I mean, it worked for a while. A lot of people bought 3D televisions and stuff like that too. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
certainly were going hard on this 3D thing at the
And
time.
indeed, number 5 is also 3D, and I think it's a very good
Yes.
3D film. Actually, from the look, I think they use the 3D really well in number 5. Number 3 was
Yeah.
okay; it wasn't overused. Some films they overuse it badly, but it was alright.
Oh yeah.
Now, I think this was another strong entry, mainly because the lead was Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and she was really good. She was really
She's
good in this.
excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with you. In fact, I think this is like there's the first one, and then to me the third one is like the next best.
oh man, and the
What do you
sep.
think?
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree. I like the first 3 really a lot. But I like 4
Yeah.
and 5 as well, but I just think the first 3 are the really solid entries.
Yeah, me too.
Again, the set piece for this was amazing. Roller coaster accident. Oh my god. It would put you off
Yes.
roller coasters. I think they actually said our goal was to make what Jaws did for going to the seaside was to make people when they go to the fun fair, right? That's what they said, something like that.
And I think they really accomplished that. I mean, because everyone has kind of that fear of roller coasters because typically a few people unfortunately do get killed on roller coasters
Oh
every
yeah, it
year. It just
happens. It
it
happens.
happens, and it's a
Yeah.
shame. But usually we don't really think about that when we get on them. But after this movie, you will.
Yeah. Well, the thing about a roller coaster is you got absolutely no control. You just have to experience it. You can't. There's no
Yeah.
getting off halfway through. None of that. It's
No.
you're there, and that is so Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character is Wendy, right? She's got a boyfriend, a best friend, a best friend's
Indeed.
boyfriend, and a few other classmates. And essentially, she gets a premonition. Someone's dropped a camcorder which interferes with the hydraulics, and then the whole thing gets totally wrecked. She basically gets a premonition or awakes from it as the ride's about to start. So she starts screaming, "I want to get off!" and all this. And some people stay on, some get off, and then they some people die. Um,
Yeah.
before anything
Quite a few.
happens, before anyone dies, a friend's boyfriend tells her about he googled this flight 180 and all the subsequent deaths. And then we see a really brutal scene where these two kind of airheady girls end up on tanning beds, which
Oh man,
and
this
they kind
scene.
of bring it on themselves because inadvertently, because they're told no liquids in the room. One takes a big cold drink in, but there's a tiny sip, puts it on the table, but the tiny
Yep.
bit of moisture condensation drips off the table and drips straight onto the unit that controls the temperature, which starts
Yeah.
malfunctioning straight away.
Yeah, I mean they definitely have the fan service in this scene with the two young ladies, but that fan service
Yeah,
quickly becomes horror. And I gotta say, I think this was one of the most brutal
brutal.
death
Oh,
scenes. I mean, I was cringing pretty
yeah,
hard. I was
yeah.
like, oh my God.
Yeah, I have
They
to say, what also got to mention, Tony Todd didn't appear in this as Bloodworth, but he was the voice of Satan doing like a statue of Satan at the fun fair doing "Dare you go on the ride" and all this deaths behind
Oh
you and all.
yeah,
He was great. He was
yeah.
doing those
He
announcements.
he was perfect. I mean, you recognize the voice immediately because
Oh yeah,
Tony Todd just has such a distinctive voice. But yeah, what a cool role. Tony Todd's done it all, man.
yeah. So there's quite a lot of people in this car in this who gets saved in this one. So we get I think we get more deaths in this than we do in the first two films, right? There's a bloke who a truck collides into the back of Wendy and the other guy, but they manage to escape, but it gets driven into the back. One of their friends is in a drive-through in front of them. They don't know it's him. They just as they know someone's being a douchebag in front of them, but the truck kind of squashes his head, right? There's some of that.
Like he actually flips them off too. Not knowing,
he does.
Yeah. But he gets his, and this guy's like I mean, you're kind of rooting for him to get killed anyway. Cause
it's one of those
total perv,
Interestingly, in like Friday the 13th, they always tend to have some people you just dislike and just wait to get killed. They don't do that much in this series, but that was one of them, right? That guy was one of them.
They definitely don't overly, like, Friday the 13th, I feel like they kind of load it with unlikable characters a lot of times.
Yeah.
But like you say, it's usually here it's like you have one or maybe two at the most, I feel like. And actually, I don't think they even do that in the first one. I don't think there's really anyone like, well, I guess there is the kind of jock guy with the car, maybe he's pretty unlikable, but I feel like he even has a lot of redeeming qualities. And that's the good thing about most of these films is that the characters do, for the most part, all of them have redeeming qualities. And again, I say for the most part because I keep
we're rooting for them, right? We're rooting
exactly.
There is that. I mean, this is the second most loathsome character in this franchise, in my opinion. But the worst is in the next film. But we'll get to that.
Yes.
And that was very satisfying. That was very satisfying.
Yeah.
Then they go and try and save another couple working at a hardware place, and we see man, a nail gun's just accidentally going off. Gets leaned on, and it just goes through someone's head about 7 or 8 times. It's like, whoa, that is so grim.
And I mean, they definitely play a lot here with the audience, like, making you say, how's it going to happen? And they have a lot to work with in a hardware store. If you think of how many things in a hardware store are actually dangerous.
Oh yeah, there's we see an automated saws, and you're thinking, what's going to happen? It turns out it's the nail gun. This one, it's kind of fun. There's a lot of head trauma and squashing in this one.
Yes,
there's a guy who's like a top athlete who keeps going. He's the master of his fate, and he doesn't believe any of this BS. About that, and his head gets squashed in a weight machine. So there you go. Warning
it's such
against
a suiting moment, and that's all I'll say about that scene. You
gotta
see it, but
there's one point there's like giant swords hanging from the wall, and it looks like they're gonna fall off. So you're trying to figure out what's gonna happen. This comes out of nowhere. What actually comes out of nowhere? It's fun. There's a young lady gets impaled on like a farming implement.
Yes.
Doesn't get impaled on a farm. It gets avoided that, but a flagpole does impale someone.
It is the flagpole ultimately.
Yeah, and a cherry picker falls on someone else. And then, let's not spoil the end. But yeah, so what was your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like this one a whole lot. I definitely think it's, like I said, I think 1 and 3 are probably the strongest, but I like them all. But this one, really strong characters, a lot of really cool deaths. And yeah, I mean, it's great. Final Destination definitely brings that quality, especially for the first, like you say, 3. But the other 2 are still a lot of fun that we're going to talk about as well.
Yeah, indeed. I think the strength of this film is Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She's the strongest lead character in all of these films, I think.
And she hasn't really done much outside of this, has she?
She does all sorts. She was in the Thing remake. Prequel. That Thing prequel. She was in Scott Pilgrim. She's been in.
So she's been in a lot of stuff.
She's been in one of the. Is it one of the Star Wars series? The Acolyte. She was pretty good in that. Things like that.
Okay.
I think she's married.
Actually,
I think she's married to Ewan McGregor. I could be wrong.
Oh, she's also in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I'd forgotten about.
Yeah,
So
great
I
in
take it all
that.
back. I take it all back. She's done a lot.
She was in a favourite of mine, which is Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I quite
Oh,
like that
yes.
film. Though
I
that
like
one,
that one too.
if you want a film that overdid the 3D, that is the film. Oh my god, there was so much
Big
3D in that
time.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like her in all sorts. I really like her in all sorts. So that was good to see. Again, I put this about on the same level as 1 and 2 in how strong it is. But I have to emphasise all of these films are also, I believe, highly rewatchable. Right,
Oh,
I
big
am
time.
gonna ask for the box set of these 5 movies for Christmas. That's how much I enjoyed this
Oh,
rewatch,
nice.
because I know I'm gonna rewatch these.
Yeah. I feel like you can put these on anytime for sure and just,
Yeah,
just
any of them
enjoy
as
it.
well. Any of them. Any of them. You
Yeah.
haven't got to know about the first one to enjoy any of the others. It just doesn't work that way.
No, like,
Quick it up. You pick it up really fast. Right. Okay. Number 4.
yeah. And whenever
This.
they're on TV, like I said, I watch them a lot. Like, because they're on all the time. Here in the U.S., they play them just whatever station. I don't know if they're cheap to license or what, but
Yeah.
and whenever they're on, I will stop and watch it. So yeah.
Yeah. They're really fun. I was actually wrong. Final Destination 3 wasn't in 3D. Final Destination 4 was in 3D. That was my mistake.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense with the timelines, because this number 4, which was originally called The Final Destination, like
Right.
it was the last in the series, and it isn't. So now it's called Final Destination 4. Was came out in
Right.
2009. Has much less connection with the other films in terms of directors and writers and stuff. It's kind of a standalone. I enjoyed this greatly. Even so. So this set piece is a NASCAR, isn't it? It's a NASCAR thing. Track me a massive accident. One of the cars blows up, and bits of cars get thrown into the audience. And again, really brutal, deaths. And then we realise it's a premonition and people trying to get away. Kind of,
Yeah.
I really liked this. I thought it was really. I know it was CG, a lot of it, but I really, really enjoyed it. And this is the one with the snake. I made a mistake. It wasn't the last film. It was this one.
Oh, was it? Okay. See, I'm
yeah.
getting them confused too as we go here, Mark.
Now, interestingly, one guy who goes out, he leaves his wife behind, and she gets killed. And there's kind of a dynamic with him of, you let my wife die because you didn't warn us. What can you do?
Although he's the one that told her to stay there, So
yeah.
But this he is not a nice guy at all. He's like a white supremacist guy.
Oh no, that wasn't the same guy. That was a different guy.
Oh, it's not. Okay,
the white
I
supremacist is a different guy.
I thought he was the one who told his wife to stay put.
No.
Okay.
I'm
getting
was it?
them confused.
Actually, you could be right. I'm confused now. Anyway, he is an arsehole. That white supremacist, and his death is very sad. Has to be said.
Indeed.
Because one of the guards, one of the ground helpers is a black guy trying to sort of say to people, go here and here, and he's like saying, there goes the neighbourhood and all this rubbish. There's also one bit where one of the girls goes, "Oh, can we move?" Because there's a guy with a big cowboy hat, and he turns around and says, "Sorry, ma'am, is my hat in your way? I'll move. Don't worry." It's kind of interesting because it kind of ties it up. What I really liked is the racist guy comes. And he's gone to a place with a big wooden cross, intended to put a burning cross on someone's lawn. So Here we go. But it all goes wrong. His truck, which is playing this metal, I think it's a song by Anvil, metal is playing, and it all goes wrong. The truck accidentally engages. The radio station trains to like reggae, which makes me laugh. Why can't we be friends?
Yeah, me too.
I
laughed at that too.
And also, gasoline's got on the road and it catches fire. So, but you basically see this racist getting dragged down the road by this truck on fire, screaming. And a guy just comes out and looks out of his door. He goes, "What the hell?" It's really
know
bad.
what's going on.
So that was
It's
kind
so
of fun.
funny.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene a lot, and I think that's just because the guy is such an asshole, I really enjoyed watching him roast. Yeah.
And the next death, I mean, we can't cover all these deaths, but the next death is kind of interesting because it's two kids being little dicks throwing rocks at a guy cutting grass, and he's going, their mother says, "Look, you've got to behave. Stop doing that. I've got to go and get, you know." Oh, actually, you know what? I think I've got this mixed up because I think this is in 5. Oh, I'm getting so mixed up. There is a bit where people go to a beauty parlour, and no, this is the one I thought it was. Basically, one of the rocks the kids throws, the lawnmower goes over it and it propels the rock through her head, basically, right?
Yeah, I like that scene too because we
Whoa.
think something's gonna happen in the salon the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Like the fan is like breaking above her, and I mean they've got sharp objects that they're working on her nails and stuff, and out of everything, it's the rock.
It's the rock. Oh yeah, because you see her nails being scraped. You think, what's gross?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh.
We get some interesting deaths in this. I'll just rattle through them. For example, we get a guy accidentally swimming in the pool, accidentally gets sucking. The pool suction system goes on hyperdrive for some reason, and he's ended up sitting over the hole where all the drainage is happening, and he gets disemboweled.
Yeah. Oh man. Like I question how realistic this was. Like, because the pool draining. I mean, I guess it would have to be pretty strong.
Yeah.
So maybe it could. I don't want to know.
You're more likely to drown by being stuck underwater than have your guts pulled out. But even so, it was kind of again a WTF. Amazing.
Yeah, it was. It's pretty great.
Great. So I mean, I won't talk about the rest of this film, but yeah, after 3D kind of, there was one bit where a snake was envisaged as part of the premonition, and that was goofy looking. His head came straight towards the screen, so that's like, oh yeah, this was made in 3D. As soon as you see something like that, it's like that's made in 3D.
Yeah, absolutely. Harkens back to the Italian Dracula film.
Well, Jason 3, Friday the 3 as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it did well enough to get another sequel. Did reasonably well. Very fun. Very, very fun film. It is a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Just not quite as good as the first 3. I put a tiny bit below them. However, it was super fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm on the same... We're both on the same wavelength here, Mark, as far as I think our enjoyment of these films, the 3, it's like the first 3 you certainly have to see, and these are fun, and they're
I would definitely watch.
Like,
you know what? If I watch these again, I will watch them all. I'll watch them all.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. Okay, let's get on to number 5. Final Destination 5, 2011. We get Tony Todd back, which is good. So this is weirdly much more connected to the first film, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
There's direct connections. Apart from Tony Todd, don't know any of the actors in this. I thought they did a decent job though. And I kind of like this one. You know what? I find it a bit weird. I never caught any of these at the cinema. I think it's one of those things. If you're not on it, you don't really know.
Yeah, and I was the same. For some reason, I have never seen any of these in the theaters. But thankfully, Mark, we got a chance to change that coming next year with Final Destination 6.
Yes, so we'll probably be covering that, I should imagine.
Oh yeah, our as they're calling it, Final Destination Bloodlines.
Bloodlines, yeah. Sounds a bit like Hellraiser a bit too much like Hellraiser titles to me, but
it does, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this one involves a company retreat, so all the employees of a certain company are on a bus going across. Is it one of the bridges? No, it's not the Golden Gate Bridge. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge, but it isn't the Golden Gate.
I don't know
a massive suspension bridge, right?
Right. Yeah. I wasn't sure if they were trying to reference any particular place here.
No, it just looked like I wasn't just sort of saying that.
Yeah.
And of course, we see a really horrific disaster unfold where, people are getting impaled on boats below the bridge, and the entire bridge is collapsing, and people trying to get out of it. That's all a premonition, but
Yeah.
someone realises they all get off the bus, and then they see this disaster unfold. But because of these premonitions and the way of the world these days, the FBI are thinking, is this some sort of terrorist? Is it? There's a bit of that, not much.
Yeah.
Um,
Just enough. I mean, because I think that would happen nowadays. The FBI would really be involved, especially because of the level, the magnitude of this accident. Which, if you think about what happened earlier in the year here, I believe it was in not Washington, but it was in maybe it was Washington. But this boat crashed into a bridge, and this scene made me think about that. Like, oh man,
wow, okay, I
brutal
wasn't
stuff.
aware of that. That wasn't. I don't think that was reported here. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway, I
it
missed that.
was. Yeah, thankfully, I mean, it could have been a lot worse, but anyway,
Yeah,
we won't harp on that. But this scene kind of feels like it kind of goes into like disaster movie territory, which I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
all of them do to an extent, right?
Yeah, indeed. That's
Little
what they
disaster
kind of
film.
are. The disasters
Yeah,
followed by a slasher, or followed by death, killing them.
yeah.
This
But
first
I
one
think,
was first death in this was a terrific setup, I have to say. Where a girl's a gymnast, and she's doing like various gymnastics routines, and various things keep happening to think, oh, what's going to happen? I'll give you
yeah,
an example.
I felt bad for
They're
her.
complaining about how hot it is, so they get the aircon working again. But these big, massive aircon units on the roof are kind of rattling like they're not very well put in. And you get close-ups of them rattling away, and you think, oh, is that going to fall on her head or something? Because that's what usually. But a little screw falls out of one, doesn't it, and lands on the balance beam she's practicing on. And we keep seeing her
Yeah,
feet go around this screw that's pointing outwards, and it's like, oh, something's going to happen. But it shows you all these apps. This is really well constructed, all right?
yes, it is.
Because
Oh,
we see her, for example, chalking her hands. You think, and there's a fan by her, and you think, is that going to be something to do with it? And it goes on and on and on like this, and it's about 5 minutes of like, what's going to happen? Something bad's going to happen. Her boyfriend's watching her, and she's on these parallel bars. And as she's practicing on parallel bars, another gymnast doing her routine, does stand on that little screw, falls over, knocks a massive pile of chalk over, which goes into the massive fan, which blows all over her, about to dismount from the parallel bars, and she basically lands and kind of gets broken in half by landing on the front while her legs are behind her. Kind of gets. Oh man, it's grim. I
it
don't
is
think
so
that could
brutal.
actually happen in real life. I just don't believe that
God, I hope
that
not.
landing would cause that accident. But it would
Uh,
break your neck probably. But
yeah,
that was just a bit much. But I still thought it was a big WTF moment.
yeah,
um,
me too.
Now the next step,
It,
there's
it
a
fits that
really
reaction.
the next step has a really unlikable guy called Isaac. He's a bit creepy and he's like
Yeah,
an annoying comedy character, right?
he's a weird guy for sure.
Because he's
Trying to
basically
hit on all the
stealing.
women.
Yeah, he's trying to steal. He steals things out of people's desks. He finds a massage. This is so weird because he finds in a woman's desk a massage token, and he immediately thinks it's sex. Right? What?
Yeah.
Why? What? This is a high class place. I do not understand why he thinks it's that at all. Anyway, he goes
I
there and
don't know.
he's kind of saying really kind of slightly racist, insulting things. But
Oh, yeah,
the
big time.
girl kind of, okay, you're one of those guys. She goes, one of our girls will be with you shortly. One who turns up and is massaging him is actually an old lady who only
Yeah.
talks Chinese, and he's kind of
Uh.
really. He goes, that feels pretty good. And he works out she could talk English, and like she's muttering to herself. And we get sometimes like, of course I talk English, you idiot, but I don't want to talk to you. But then
Exactly.
she starts doing acupuncture on him. which doesn't go well. Let's face it. I
No.
won't go more than that. It doesn't go well in the end. Things happen, you know.
I love that scene though.
Yeah,
I think
but
it
he
might
had
be
it
one of my
coming. He
favorites.
had it coming.
Exactly makes it even more satisfying when they're jerks. And this guy was a weird one, so I didn't mind seeing him get his.
What I like about this series is they starting to cherry pick things that we all, or many of us will experience in real life, but taken to here's a little EC story of what happens when the things go wrong when you're, you know, be it the dentist chair or whatever, right?
Exactly.
This one
Yeah.
has eye laser surgery, and it's so horrific and grim.
It.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
It'll make you think again about that LASIK surgery for sure.
Yeah, oh my god. The things that I won't get to
Oh,
the specifics. There's
God.
also there's an argument in a factory where someone gets basically hung up on a hook,
Yeah,
which
one of
is
those
grim.
giant like crane hooks. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
this is
brutal.
one of those. This film develops a new bit of mythology, which is if you have cheated death and you kill someone else, or I don't know, accident, probably, well, just kill someone else, then death doesn't come for you. So killing someone else throws it off you, which is an interesting twist. I'm not sure I liked it as an idea, but it kind of had good and bad points for this film.
Yeah,
And
I
the
felt the
death of the
same.
guy in the hook was accidental. So the guy that accidentally precipitated it was one of the ones singled for death by death, who thought he then escaped it. Right? That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was the guy who initially had the premonition, right?
Yeah, but then it
Yeah,
kind of turns into a "I've got to kill you so I live" kind of story, which I don't think works as well for this film.
I didn't
Yeah,
either. It
nah,
was kind of weird the direction they went,
yeah,
particularly with the guy since he had lost his girlfriend. I mean, I know grief does terrible things to people, but not it doesn't really turn you into a killer like this, you know. I don't
yeah.
I didn't think anyway. I thought it was a little overshot, a little overdone.
Yeah. Anyway, this leads to the final couple to think that they've, well, two of the final people to think they've escaped it, and they decide they're going to go to Paris. And in that flight, we see the people from the first film arguing and getting off the flight, which is a nice tie-up, right? It's a nice
I thought that
tie-up.
was cool.
Yeah. Um, so,
I really enjoyed
so
that.
at that point, you realise this is a prequel. Or
Yeah,
maybe you've
exactly.
realised before. I didn't, but it was kind of interesting. And then
Yeah.
there's a little twist at the end, which I won't go into. Yeah, so another fun film. Second tier for me. Good to see Bloodworth back. We didn't really talk about it, but he does make a very brief appearance. Walking
Yeah.
around really sketchy way.
Doing his coroner thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I do like that they actually get to question him, like, "Hey, why are you always following us?" And you know, I can't
I
remember
just.
his response, but it's
Yeah.
something like, you know, I followed the death or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
It's kind of interestingly they used. Do you remember in the first one I said they used the premise of using horror and thriller directors? They've reintroduced it in this one because one character's got a surname Friedkin, after William Friedkin. One's got a surname
oh,
Hooper after Toby Hooper. One's got a surname Castle after William Castle. So
you
that
know, I
they
don't know how
and
that
there's others. There's
completely
probably
passed
others.
me over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't realise. I knew about the first one, but didn't realise it. So only looking at the character list, I've realised they did it again. It's kind of
it's funny
interesting.
because yeah, during the movie, totally went over my head. I didn't even didn't even realize it. But that's really cool. I love it when they do stuff like that. Just little nods to the wonderful horror community. You know,
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah. I mean, second tier for me, but still really good. Really enjoyed it. I am surprised this was been off my radar for so long. I'm really glad you suggested this, and I can see why your friend Rob really likes it. I totally do as well. I think it's a great
Yeah,
series.
they're a lot of fun. And I mean, I was very curious how these would hold up too, because, you know, this was another horror film that I mean, I was pretty young when I saw this. I was still in high school for the first one, and then just having seen them over the years kind of periodically, like I said, I'd sit down and see them on TV, and I'd watch them, and so it's really been fun, kind of going back through and seeing that yes, they still hold up very well, and I'm
Yeah.
really happy about that. Really happy
Yeah,
about that.
I also think for number five, the 3D was really used well in this one.
I agree. Yeah.
It was a strong 3D entry. I haven't seen it in 3D, but you can just tell. There's not
Hmm.
many films that I think are improved by 3D. Most of them is to the detriment. There's a couple of films I really like that I think the 3D does improve it, particularly Dread. I think Dread really works well with 3D. But there's not many others, but I think this is one of them. I put this second tier, but I have to say the whole gymnastics thing, that was kind of almost like Hitchcock. The way it was
I
constructed and
love
put
that
together.
scene.
It was
Yeah.
great. It was so good. And I feel bad
Yeah.
saying it's second tier because of that scene alone almost elevated it. I'd say fourth is the
Yeah.
weakest for me, but they're all so close, They're all
That's the
real fun.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's really it's almost hard to rank because there's I feel like every one of them has something cool in there
Yeah.
that you just have to see. It's like, okay, let me see how they're gonna do this, and it's always very creative. And as we talked about at the beginning, I think it's cool that you don't actually have like a Michael Myers or a physical killer. You have the ultimate killer, which is death itself,
Yeah, yeah.
which is just
Um,
neat.
Yeah, as I say, the 3D stuff was really. For example, right? Usually, when you have a 3D film, it's people pointing things at the camera, right?
Right,
If
exactly.
you watch the bridge sequence, this uses the whole. Okay, we're looking down from a high onto the water below while someone's crawling across, a narrow pole, right?
Right.
That the depth of field you'd get from 3D would make that an amazing thing to watch, in my opinion. I
Oh,
believe
it would.
that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. They don't use 3D in the usual way, which is point things at cameras. They use things in 3D where it's about the depth of field is making you anxious. Yeah. So I think there were some good things, really good things about this film in that respect.
Yeah,
It's
I
just a
totally
great
agree.
little franchise all round. This really is. Um,
It is, and yeah, I think kind of people from, I guess, maybe I don't know what you'd even call our group, my
UNH
age group,
is.
I guess.
Oh, you're right. Oh, I
Well,
see.
well,
Yeah.
well, like like there's like millennials and all that. I guess technically I'd be a millennial, but just barely. But I guess for like millennials, it's like okay, this is kind of like this and Scream, I guess, are really the kind of the
Yeah.
two. I feel like horror franchises that sort of my generation have sort of contributed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there are some
This.
others too, but this is
Yeah.
one of the big ones,
I have to
and I'm
say, I
proud of
think this
of it.
might be one of my favourite franchises. I just really
Yeah,
enjoyed it. I see
yeah,
no
I
weaknesses.
love it.
Some franchises are, oh yeah, this one's not so good, but this one's all right. This isn't like that. I like all five. I'd like all
Yeah,
five. Um,
they're all cool.
yeah, and they're very close. Okay, I think that one's about discussion about Final Destination. We just like this one. We have got a lot of
Yeah.
feedback. I am gonna start reading through this.
All right.
Thank you everyone that contributed, but we have got a fair
Yeah,
bit,
thank
and
you so much.
I'll read and we'll comment. All right.
That sounds good.
Okay. Let's. How Facebook changes the order of comments sometimes. I'm just okay. Right, here we
Oh,
go.
always.
Rolf Pickler. Hi, Rolf. He said, "Did you know I've never seen one FD movie? I think they tap into an anxiety so pervasive and so very possible in a modern world that it might be just the most frightening of all horror franchises." Yeah,
Oh
honestly,
yeah.
since I've watched it, when I'm doing things that are a bit unsafe, it's like, hold on. I've watched Final Destination. I know how this ends up if I'm
Right.
not careful. So, in that respect, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He's
And I was talking to my brother about these earlier, and I said, they always say death and taxes, right? But you know what? Even taxes are not always like definite, but but
yeah,
but death, everyone's gonna
yeah,
pay the piper eventually, and so
yeah.
it gives us all we all fear death. It's a natural thing, and so yeah, these films really get to the root of it for sure, Ralph.
Yeah, yeah. And then he goes on to say, that will be death by transportation accident, which is not vampires, demons, zombies, or slasher maniacs. It's the possibility that we choose every single day. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
He also goes on to say, also R.I.P. to our beloved king, Mr. Tony Todd. And he's posted a picture of him as Bloodworth. Awesome. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of the greats.
And then we get a contribution from Eric Anderson. Hi, Eric. And he says, it did for log trucks what Psycho did for showers. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And then we got one from Bruce. This is a long one, so settle in.
Buckle
Hey
up.
guys, hope you're both doing well. I love the final. Hi Bruce. I love the Final Destination movie franchise. Although I think number 4 titled The Final Destination is a bit weak, but they brought it back in number 5, which I can't believe was 13 years ago. Number 5 also has one of my favourite deaths of the franchise, with the gymnastics scene and the screw on the balance beam. My anxiety was so high. Yep, it definitely was.
Totally
I have to mention, I haven't read through all of these. This is my first time reading. I deliberately didn't, other than quick eyeball, because I didn't want to be influenced in what I said, taking away from someone else. You know, sometimes when you read things, you then repeat them as if they're your thoughts, right? It's just a thing with it.
True.
And I wanted to avoid that. Anyway. When the original movie released in 2000, it was on the back of the surge of the 90s teen horror slasher movies. Scream, Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, etc. They clearly put a cast together of well-known faces to bring in the audience, but instead of having a physical killers, this time it was fate or death itself. This is what I loved about the movies. How do you stop fate? How do you teach death? Can you change your final destination? In some ways, even without the presence of a monster, they remind me of Nightmare on Elm Street. They do, yeah, they definitely do. Ensembles, under threat, trying to figure out how to avoid it, yeah? So I certainly see that. Almost impossible to escape from. You could try and not fall asleep to avoid Freddy, but eventually he's going to get you. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rule, but likely the best you could hope for is to end up in a padded cell, or you may still choke on a pea. Yeah.
True.
That's never going to happen in a Final Destination. Well, it might. I say that.
You know what, Mark?
I say that.
Don't give them ideas. Don't give them ideas.
Out of the story arcs, some of the actual deaths are like watching a game of Mousetrap with a twist. You see all those bizarre chain of events happening that lead up to most deaths, and these were the moments that make these movies a bit different and worthwhile watching over and over. I believe there's a new movie next year, and IMDb have Tony Todd listed. Will be great, yet sad to see the legend in one of his last roles. Even the small part he played in the franchise, he stood out in his sheer presence. Rip Candyman. Yep, absolutely. Tony Todd, excellent addition to anything, basically. But yeah, I have to mention, he talks about watching the Mousetrap chain of events build, and I have to add the misdirects as well. Add to the fun, you know, the fact that they're setting up all these things. You think, they're going to die like this, and they don't. It's something out of the blue. That is a lot of fun, right? To these.
Oh, it is. It's one of the reasons we love it.
And then we have some feedback from Andrew Rooney. Hi, Andrew. And he says, I think it's turned out to be one of the best and most consistent of all major franchises. That was a Final Destination moment is a catchphrase in our family anytime something looks potentially dangerous. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when you're standing on a rickety stepladder holding a chainsaw is one of those, that sort of thing, right?
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there. And he says, I saw part 2 at a film festival. It was one of the best cinema experiences I've had. Already by the second instalment, the film knew what it was, and so did the audience shouting at the screen. Part 3 is my favourite of the series. Love it. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And then I just posted very briefly to see if I can get any more feedback. Before I said, film report so far. I've watched the first 2. I am enjoying these way more than I was expecting. Really juiced to watch the rest. The level of WTF as you watch is quite high, which I think is a fair comment, having watched only 2. Then we get our last bit of feedback from Kevin Matthews. Alongside the Child's Play movies, it's the most consistently entertaining horror franchise as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely agree. It's really entertaining. That's what it is. And he says the fourth sold on the 3D is the weakest, which I think we agree with there. But the rest are so good, thanks in no small part to the Rube Goldberg-esque nature of every potential death, with numerous fake-outs and setups keeping viewers ever vigilant, and a cast of main characters generally written well enough to keep you in good company, while also knowing that most aren't going to make it to the end credits. First is the best for foreshadowing, but each installment has at least one fantastic set piece to make it worth your while. I'd say every one of them has a great set piece and probably at least two, probably even three great death scenes. I'd say that's what we're talking about, actually.
Yeah.
These are great little movies. Really fun.
They really are.
They are super gory. We haven't really talked about it. They are very gory. If they were slightly less gory, which I don't want them to be, by the way, but if they were slightly less gory, these kind of would work as good kind of family films in some respects, in that scary, fun, popcorny things.
Yeah, that's true.
But they are proper gory.
Yeah, you probably don't want the kids around for these,
squashed people, squashed heads, people on fire, nail guns through the head, all of that. Yeah. So, yes, so thank you to everyone.
Too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I should have mentioned that. Thank you to everyone that gave us feedback. We got some really good feedback on that one.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
And a really fun franchise. I'm not sure what we'll be doing next. We're coming up to Christmas, but we'll figure out something. We covered so much Christmas stuff already. I can't really think what else. I'm sure there's loads.
I've got some ideas. I'm sure. We'll definitely. We'll be back with another episode before the year's end.
Yeah, I've got to check the archives and see what we've already covered and pick out one we haven't. Because I know a few really strong ones that usually don't get talked about at all in horror podcasts or as Christmas films, but there's some very strong Christmas horror and horror adjacent kind of movies.
I've got like rotations of Christmas horror movies now, Mark, since we started this show.
So have I, yeah.
8 years ago, something like that, and it's crazy, man.
I get on mine out on the 1st of December because you can't possibly fit them all in if you leave it any later than that.
It's true.
That's my tradition. I get out a bit. I mean, 2 big stacks. I must have 4. This isn't just horror. This is Christmas films. 2 big stacks, and I dig them. Man. All right, then.
I love Christmas films in general. You know, it doesn't even have to be horror related, but I feel like it's extra special if you combine horror with Christmas.
Yeah, in our house we get a lot of Christmas movies and a lot of Christmas TV specials because there's lots of good ones of them too. So that's what we kind of do around here. Anyway,
I also.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off, man. My bad. No, I was just gonna say, Lord of the Rings. The second Lord of the Rings came out around Christmas, I believe, when I first saw it. So I usually pack the 3 extended Lord of the Rings versions in during the holidays as well. So Christmas is a busy season anyway, but you pack a lot of movies in there too, and it's even busier. But it's fun.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, those films did come out December. All 3 of them. Yeah. All right, I think it's time to wind up. And would you like to lead us out?
Yeah, happy to. Well, thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it. And again, as you said, Mark, thanks for the great feedback. You can find us online wherever you get your podcasts. We're pretty much on anything. Just look up United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube. We have a video version of the podcast. Previously, I was putting them out about like 2 weeks after the audio, but they're dropping a little bit closer now. I have an editing process where I'm sort of editing both versions side by side. So the audio still goes up first for all our audio listeners because we've been audio since the beginning. But then our video goes up usually either a day or 2 later. I don't want to make promises I can't keep, but typically a day or 2 later because, YouTube, you have to do all the uploading and that takes a little bit. But yeah, so check us out on YouTube as well. And also, of course, on Facebook, just go and enter United Nations of Horror. You'll find us. Also, you can do UNH podcast. That search term works too. So thanks so much, everyone. We will be back again with a Christmas episode, final episode for the year. And who knows what we'll cover, Mark, but we'll be finding something good. Yes. So bye from me.
And bye from me.
This has been the United Nations of Horror. See you next time, everybody.
The United Nations of Horror is a podcast about all things horror. From thrillers of yesteryear to today's modern horror, we are here to present fun and intelligent conversation about the genre films we love. Join us and please help spread the word about the United Nations of Horror podcast and videocast to horror fans across the globe. Find the podcast on all fine podcasting services. Join us on Facebook by simply going to facebook.com and entering in United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com and searching for United Nations of Horror podcast.